In kingdoms where dawn rose not to greet laughter, but to announce duty, a young girl stood at the edge of destiny. She was born into silk and tutelage, raised beneath vaulted ceilings and stern whispers of nannies who reminded her that princesses did not cry, even when childhood begged them to. Her toys were carved of gold, but her freedom was carved away long before she touched a throne, and when she turned barely old enough to understand dreams, they gave her a crown instead. The wedding was announced with drums and church bells, a celebration disguised carefully enough that no one dared call it what it truly was, a sacrifice. Courtiers smiled, poets praised her beauty, and foreign envoys bowed, admiring the fragile jewel that would unite two uneasy kingdoms. She walked through marble corridors as though marching to execution, her footsteps echoing in a palace where history had never been kind to young brides. Her gown shimmered like winter snow touched by morning sunlight, a masterpiece sewn to imprison a child's frame. Beneath lace and pearls, her heart beat with the speed of a terrified bird. Beside her the king marched proudly, a man older than the stone pillars holding the cathedral roof, a monarch carved from distrust and ambition. His eyes did not soften at her sight. To him she was not a wife. She was a guarantee, a key to secure alliances, obedience, heirs and loyalty through blood. The ceremony felt eternal. Vows spoken like chains, rings slipped onto trembling fingers, and a kiss delivered not in tenderness but in tradition. Nobles cheered, priests blessed, and the crowd roared as though a victory had been won. But the girl, no, the queen now, felt something inside her wither. Childhood dimmed. Innocence smothered. The gowns and jewels weighed like shackles. The crown felt colder than steel, and every congratulatory whisper seemed to scratch at her bones. When night came, candles flickered throughout the palace like stars swallowed by darkness. Servants scurried with downcast eyes, knowing what this night demanded. The bedchamber glowed with oppressive warmth. Silk curtains, perfumed air thick enough to choke. Golden mirrors reflecting her fragile youth like a cruel reminder she could never return to who she was hours ago. She stood at the window, unable to breathe, watching torches outside sway in a wind that felt free when she could not be. Her hands trembled. She clutched a prayer ribbon given by her mother. A ribbon that once smelled faintly of lavender and safety. Now it smelled of fear. The king entered. He did not greet her gently. He dismissed maids with a cold gesture. The door shut with a finality that echoed louder than church bells. She felt small, unbearably small, standing beneath his shadow. He approached like a conqueror claiming territory, not a husband welcoming a bride. The first night bled into dawn in silence. Screams existed only inside her, trapped because queens do not scream. Queens endure. By morning, she sat motionless at the foot of the bed, eyes blank, breath shallow, nightgown torn like a battle flag of innocence lost. The palace celebrated. Musicians played, wine flowed, nobles laughed. And behind thick walls a queen withered. The second night came with no mercy. She prayed, whispered to saints she barely remembered, begged quietly to chandeliers holding dozens of trembling candles. She had no voice left to protest, no strength left to fight. Her hands shook as he approached again. He carried entitlement like armor and desire like cruelty disguised as duty. When sunrise painted the sky pink, her pillow was cold, her lips cracked, her pulse faint like a dying candle flame. The servants who entered did not look at her. They bowed and left quickly as though sympathy was a crime. Whispers began spreading like poison. Court ladies muttered behind jeweled fans. Guards exchanged uneasy glances. The queen, barely more than a child, was fading before their eyes. By the third night she no longer cried. Tears had abandoned her, perhaps out of mercy, perhaps out of exhaustion. She learned to go still, to become breath without life, body without voice. She did not look at him anymore. She looked past him, through him, into some abyss that felt safer than reality. The fourth day brought a physician, summoned not for healing, but for verification. He entered pale and trembling, instruments shaking in his hands. The king demanded proof she was fulfilling her role. The physician left broken. His expression said he had seen tragedy, not royalty. That evening the chapel candles burned lower than usual, as though even God turned his face away. On the fifth night, she clung to the edge of sanity. Shadows whispered to her. Drapes moved like phantoms. She imagined her mother's voice telling her stories of angels. But even angels felt like betrayal now. When the king touched her, she did not feel skin. She felt cold steel crushing petals in a garden forbidden to bloom. Somewhere outside, fireworks burst for celebration. She imagined each explosion as stars collapsing, bright for a moment, then gone, like her childhood. The sixth night turned the bedchamber into a tomb for innocence. Her lips murmured prayers without sound. Her fingers clutched bedsheets not for modesty but for survival. Her soul flinched at every breath the king took, but she endured. Not because she wanted to, but because fate forced her to. And then came the seventh night, the night legends whisper about, though no page dares record it fully. She did not resist. She did not cry. She did not feel. She became stone. She lay perfectly still, not surrendering, but refusing to die for anyone's legacy. In that stillness she found something terrifying and sacred, the birth of resolve. When dawn broke on the seventh day, the queen rose, slowly, painfully, but with a silence sharper than blades. Her feet touched the marble floor and the world seemed to bow, not to royalty but to resilience. She walked to the mirror. The girl she once knew was gone. In her place stood a queen forged in torment, carved by endurance and crowned by survival. From that day, the king never reached for her again. Not because he pitied her, but because he feared the quiet fire in her eyes. Even tyrants fear what they cannot break. She began to rule beside him, at first in shadows, then in light. Her voice was soft but carried the weight of cathedral bells. Her gaze silenced rooms. Her presence commanded armies. She learned politics swiftly, not from advisors but from pain. Betrayal taught her vigilance. Suffering taught her strategy. Survival taught her power. Servants bowed deeper than before. Nobles chose their words carefully. Even enemies whispered her name with caution. Some called her the Iron Rose, delicate to behold, deadly to mishandle. Others swore she was blessed by saints or protected by spirits of queens who came before her. Queens who also endured but never conquered. Years passed, and the king withered. Power slipped from his hands like water. When illness finally took him, the court mourned politely, but the kingdom breathed. And the queen, once a trembling bride, sat upon the throne with quiet triumph carved into her bones. Her reign was just wise, unyielding. Peasants adored her. Generals obeyed her. None dared speak of the 7 nights, not out of respect, but out of reverence for the fire those nights forged. Some say she never slept deeply again. She would rise at midnight, walk the palace halls barefoot, her gown trailing like moonlight. The guards pretended not to see. They believed she walked with ghosts. And sometimes in the oldest part of the palace where secrets cling to stone, servants hear a sound, not sobbing, not laughter, but a heartbeat, soft, steady, eternal. The heartbeat of a queen who survived what history refused to name. A reminder that pain builds empires just as much as armies do. Her story was cleansed in chronicles, softened in paintings, romanticized in songs. But truth lingers like a shadow no light can erase. There was once a wedding night that did not end in one night. It stretched into 7 days, 7 trials, 7 deaths of innocence, and 1 rebirth into power. And so she remains, a queen carved not by destiny but by endurance. A monarch born not from coronation but from survival. A legend whispered not in triumph, but in reverent fear. For some crowns are forged from gold, but hers was forged from 7 nights in hell.